and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History's Book Club series, the Plothound Literary Society. My name is Stacy, and I handle adult education here at the North Carolina Museum of History. And we're thrilled to welcome Earl Iams, our curator of African American history and agriculture here at NCMOH. Today, Earl will be doing his presentation for us entitled Historic Princeville, America's Oldest Incorporated Community of Color.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank everybody for coming in. And again, my name's Earl Imes, and I like to say I'm your favorite farmer and historian, and have been fortunate to have been involved with the historic town of Princeville, North Carolina, since the 1990s, and have been doing quite a bit of research dating back to my days at State Archives, both as a reference archivist and a photograph archivist there. And so I was able to familiarize myself with a lot of the General Assembly session records, in addition to our fantastic photograph collection at the State Archives. So what we have prepared here are a couple things which reflect both that research as well as how that research translated into an exhibit that we had on display back in 2019 here at the NCMOH. And it was entitled Freedom, exclamation point, a promise disrupted. And if we can, we have a brief YouTube video about that exhibit, which is currently available as a traveling exhibit from NCMOH. Well, this exhibit is a reconstruction exhibit, and it has been a long time coming. Our reconstruction story is a very complex one that needs to be told from many perspectives. But the primary perspective, or that lowest common denominator, is the freedom of the formerly enslaved men, women, and children here in North Carolina. In our state in particular, there was 200 years of legal slavery before the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865. So when 1866 and that Reconstruction era begins, this is the first time in American history that people of color, formerly enslaved people, had control, autonomy over their lives and their family. Before that time, it was illegal for more than two people of color to assemble. It was considered a slave rebellion or a slave conspiracy. So that our laws had become customs that we had to unlearn. And part of this exhibit tells us, conveys how people aspire to the citizenship and the full rights of citizens and equality. Again, the title of our presentation is The Oldest Town, A History of the Origins of Princeville, North Carolina, the oldest community of color incorporated in the United States. And what you see on the screen is several venues where we've had different types of pop-up exhibits and programs which have included the following information and research that you're going to see. So cue to the next screen, please. And again, this is part of the traveling exhibit Freedom, A Promise Disrupted, North Carolina, 1862 through 1901, where historic Princeville, North Carolina, fits squarely in the middle of this conversation, as well as this exhibit and this Reconstruction era. So cue to the next screen. So to understand historic Princeville, which is located in Edgecombe County in the eastern part of our state in the northeastern coastal plain, it's an old community and one of the largest during the colonial and antebellum eras, Edgecombe County was one of our largest cotton producing, plantation, and slave-holding counties, in addition to our state's leading industry, which was naval stores, as well as a lot of our early tobacco planters in eastern North Carolina, particularly, are in Edgecombe County. But when the Civil War ends in April 1865, and the truce is literally signed here by Union General William T. Sherman and Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston at historic Bennett Place, which is a state historic site in what is now Durham, North Carolina. It created a new paradigm where our union, our state in particular, between 1663, when Carolina was chartered, and 1865, had been legally 202 years of codified slavery, and hence a slave economy and social system structure that resulted. And Edgecombe County reflected the demographics of large slave-holding counties that are particularly located in the eastern part of the state. Many times the electorate of that county after 1865 up to 1900 was oftentimes between 70 and 80% of a African American electorate. And so out of that emerges some of the first African American political pioneers in the state of North Carolina. And what you see on the screen is an artifact from our collection was called a greenback. And it was featured in our exhibit because a lot goes into understanding Reconstruction, in that part of the effort to reconstruct our union was to unify the monetary currency of the United States. Whereas before, lots of our states operated in various dollar notes. And then during the Civil War, the American Civil War, 1861 to 65, the Confederate states issued Confederate notes. So the economy was all in shambles, literally in flames and spiraling. And so the United States government began to really issue what are called greenbacks, and that is what you see on the screen. And this is what becomes the paper form of currency for the most part after the Civil War, during the Reconstruction, and after Civil War. Whereas before that time frame, and in North Carolina, we dealt in all forms of currency, as I mentioned formerly, Confederate notes, but also still some folks were dealing in British pound currency, Spanish meal dollars, French francs, and even currency in human beings. So this currency note is indicative of the United States of America concentrated effort to have a uniformed monetary economy based on greenbacks. And so the caption is basically talking about some of the first African American pioneers like Henry Cherry, who was often referred to as the Republican boss of the county. And understand, many people of color, particularly formerly enslaved people, joined the new Republican Party, the newly formed Republican Party, which had recently been formed in 1856. And of course, it was the party of President Abraham Lincoln. And so logically, a lot of formerly enslaved people joined the Republican Party. And so Henry Cherry was born enslaved in the 1830s. And he was a very skilled artisan and trained carpenter who knew math and was very good at his trade. And he built some of the finest homes in Tarboro, North Carolina, historic Tarboro, which is a colonial town established by the British in 1760, but is one of the larger towns in eastern North Carolina and the county seat of Edgecombe. And if you have an opportunity, the oldest town square in the state of North Carolina is in Tarboro. And the second oldest town square in America is located in Tarboro, established 1760. So Tarboro, because of the demographics and the highly concentrated African American population, almost overnight transforms into a air quote Black Republican Mecca. And Henry Cherry emerges as the leader in that effort. And our research showed that in 1870, on the census, he literally had $1,200 of greenback and real and personal property. He also took advantage of the opportunity to marry, because before the Civil War, it was against the law and, in fact, the slave code for people who were formerly enslaved to have a formal and legal marriage. And he raised a family, and out of his union were two daughters who were rumored to be among the loveliest and most beautiful maidens of the day. And in fact, they attracted the attention of future Congressman Henry Plummer Cheatham, who lived in Oxford and Granville County, and eventually founded the Oxford Colored Orphanage there. And another daughter married the future Congressman George Henry White, who was a lawyer, state senator, and who would be a future United States solicitor as well as the last Black Republican to serve the United States Congress during the Reconstruction era. And literally in 1894, Henry Cheatham and George Henry White flipped a coin to determine who would run for the second congressional district in Eastern North Carolina. So flip the screen and we'll go to the next. Thank you. So between 1868 and 1901, Black political accomplishments were frequently interrupted with setbacks from outspoken white supremacists and vigilante groups such as the Ku Klux Klan and the Red Shirts. I'm going to pause there for a moment because we have artifacts in our NCMOH collection that reflect the Ku Klux Klan. We have the literal charter that formed the Klan in 1867. Interestingly, the same date to which the January 1st, 1867 grandfather clause in the 1901 Constitution refers. And we also have red shirts in our collection. And the red shirts we'll learn about later in this presentation were a group of vigilante Klansmen who were armed almost as militia and literally had red shirts to reflect their bloody terror. And from other threats like assassinations and lynchings, legislative actions like redistricting and gerrymandering. So the final blow was, again, as I mentioned, the 1901 grandfather clause. But between that time, North Carolina managed to elect 125 Black Republican legislators or Republicans of color and 4 United States congressmen of color. What you see on the screen is an image that depicts some of the racial violence that took place at the 1868 elections, the same year which our state ratified a new constitution, which largely shaped the social dynamics of Reconstruction and put North Carolina in particular on a path to become one of the more progressive states in the Union, and particularly the most progressive state in the South. But if you want to see an actual display or exhibit about some of these Black Republicans, you can visit our historic North Carolina State Capitol, where back in 2009, I had the opportunity to curate an exhibit that literally lists all the names of the House members from the Black Republican caucus between 1861 and 1901 on the House chamber doors, and the Black Republican state senators between that same time period on the Senate chamber doors. And so when you visit our historic state capitol, be sure to look at those exhibits there. So thank you, and let's switch to the next frame, please. Okay, great. So I mentioned that before my tenure here as a curator of African American history and agriculture at the North Carolina Museum of History, NCMLH, began in 2008. I had the opportunity to serve 18 years as an archivist at the State Archives of North Carolina. And so what you see on the screen is a copy of a bill from the General Assembly session records of 1884, 1885 from the State Archives of North Carolina. And during the time frame of my tenure beginning in 1980 and in the 1990s, as I mentioned, when I began working particularly with the historic town of Princeville, North Carolina, I was able to locate these original articles of incorporation for February of 1885, which this recording is taking place in February 2026, which is the 141st anniversary of the oldest town incorporated by people of color in the United States. And interestingly, and we can also give salute to the fact that this year, 2026, is the 250th anniversary of America 250. And of course, Princeville is a large part of that history and story. And in addition to this year, 2026, this is also the 100th anniversary of what initially began as Black History Month, introduced by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And 50 years ago in 1976, President Jimmy Carter expanded what we now know as Black History Month. And in 2026, we celebrate and commemorate 100 years of Black History Month, as well as 250 years of America and American freedom. And no way better to express that through a presentation by about America's first incorporated community of color. And so a brief story I'll tell you about this document. In 2010, as I was here at the Museum of History, I received a call from a patron, a friend and colleague, and some might know as an on-air radio personality, a man named Tom Joyner. And he hosted for many years the Tom Joyner Morning Show. And he called and alerted me that he would be in Raleigh in 2010 to promote the United States Census and the fact that everybody who were American citizens needed to make sure that they registered for the census. And so during that process on air, he indicated that he had been to Eatonville, Florida, and erroneously he credited Eatonville, Florida as the oldest community of color incorporated by African Americans, people of color. And so I immediately knew that wasn't the case. Eatonville, Florida was incorporated in 1887. And so I picked up the phone and I called him back and I told him, I said, hey, Tom, you have to know that the oldest community of color incorporated is in fact here in North Carolina. He says, oh yeah, Earl, how can you prove it? So I left our NCMOH and I literally crossed the street, went to archives, pulled what you see on the screen and drove down New Bern Avenue in Raleigh and met him and showed it to him. And we took a fantastic photograph together. And from that point forward, Mr. Joyner promoted not Eatonville as the oldest historically Black community, but instead Princeville, North Carolina, as that oldest town and oldest community of color. And since that time, we've been able to correct a lot of outdated and incorrect historical information that had other towns, Mound Bayou out in Mississippi, incorporated the same year, 1887. But of course, as you see on the screen, 141 years, February 1885, Princeville, North Carolina was in fact incorporated as a legal municipality within the state of North Carolina. Next screen, please. So what you see on the screen is a composite portrait of the 1885 North Carolina House of Representatives. And you may see slightly circled on the top right-hand corner, second row from the right, Representative Brian W. Tharp, as is pronounced in Eastern North Carolina twang, and who was elected to the 1884 North Carolina House of Representatives. And he served between January and March 1885. So back then, you have to understand that elections, like they are contemporarily, are in November. General elections that is. And so the state and national elections of November 1884 resulted in the current image that you see, with an asterisk, and I'll explain that coming up. But Representative Tharp did not, in fact, introduce the bill to incorporate Princeville. Next screen, please. So several things took place during the election time frame of November 1884 and throughout that year. And I previously referenced the Ku Klux Klan. And oftentimes people, academics, general public erroneously think that the Ku Klux Klan ended in 1872 with the Klan trials and the Congress and congressional hearings, and in some places it did disappear, but for the most part it went underground. And they still had the general modus operandi of committing outrages like lynchings and burnings and Klan cross burnings and outrageous acts along the line. And so 1884 was one of those years where it was a high point of Klan activity. And so back during Reconstruction, there were several counties, particularly in Eastern North Carolina and the border counties of Virginia. Those border counties that were majority people of color, if you have a map, would be listed along the Virginia-North Carolina line, from Caswell County, which is just northeast of Greensboro and Guilford County, North Carolina. And then you would skip over the eastern county east, which is Person, but then the county east of Person County, which, by the way, has a very large indigenous Occaneechi population. And east of Person County is Granville County. And Granville County, before the Civil War, had the largest aggregate population of men, women, and children who were enslaved in the state of North Carolina. And then east of Granville is Warren County, and Warren east is going to Halifax County, and east of Halifax, Northampton, and then east of Northampton, Hertford County, and Gates County. And all those counties, skipping over the Chowanok River into Chowan County and Pasquotank County, where Elizabeth City is, and Perquimans County, where the town of Hertford is, all of those counties were majority counties of color. And so in many of those counties and counties like them, which were on the coast and throughout Eastern North Carolina, the Klan literally burned some of the ballot boxes. And in two of those counties, Caswell and Northampton counties, the Black Republican legislators contested the elections. Well, in Caswell County, there was a representative who was elected named Morris or Maurice, sometimes as pronounced Corbett. And if you'll recall, during Reconstruction, Caswell County and Alamance County were particularly centers of Ku Klux Klan activity. And so what resulted was the elected representative from Caswell, Morris Corbett, was literally outseated by the Democrat who literally got on his horse, rode from Caswell County, got to the Capitol in Raleigh, and was sworn in. And so a lengthy trial took place. And in March of 1884, it was decided that Morris Corbett was in fact the duly elected person, but that was with only a week or two left in the session, because again, back in those times, the November body of the legislature was elected, and then they were seated in January for the short session, and the session would end in March. So there were only 2 months in those short sessions back then. So as a direct result, the previous 1884-85 House session, that composite portrait that you saw, did not show Morris Corbett because the photograph was taken in January of 1885 by the photographer in Raleigh for the General Assembly. And so a second contested election took place for another elected Black Republican named Nad Rawls, who this time he was able to beat his contestant and in fact have a Senate hearing in Raleigh in the Capitol about the Ku Klux Klan burning the election ballots in Northampton County, where he was from. And so because of lack of evidence, he was not able, and I'll say lack of evidence because the ballots were burned and there was no evidence that he was in fact elected. He was not seated during the 1884-85 General Assembly session record. So there was a lot of election chicanery, Ku Klux Klan trickery that took place of this election that kind of set the stage for some interesting things to happen. Now, on the left side, on the middle of the screen, and on the left side, you'll read a caption that I wrote that reads that this is possibly and believed to be the tintype of State Senator Robert S. Taylor, who was born Jamaican in 1849 and an educator by profession. He immigrated to Edgecombe County during Reconstruction, where he was twice elected to the North Carolina State Senate. In the same election cycle, he was elected in November 1884, and in 1885, he served the January-March session of the Senate. And in 1887, he also was elected, served where he was elected during the November 1886. So pay close attention to the image of this tintype. Now, I mentioned my background in archives, and I had the opportunity to serve as the photograph archivist at the State Archives of North Carolina between 1994 and the year 2000. And so having some background in the historiography of photography, tintypes is a form of photography that was prevalent in the United States and throughout the South in particular from the 1860s through the 1880s. And so the image that you see is not only a tintype, but also noticing some of the features is that this man appears to be obviously of African descent, well attired, formally attired nonetheless. And so if I would have to guesstimate his age, I would say between 30 and 40 years old or years of age. So if we can go to the next screen. So I mentioned that to you because that previous artifact is something that's in limbo in our collection because it was incorrectly ascribed to be the man who you see in the picture. And that man is Robert Robinson Taylor, who has, as you can see, a Black Heritage stamp, courtesy United States Postal Service, who is the first Black MIT graduate and a Wilmington, North Carolina native. He's also one of the builders at Tuskegee Institute out in Alabama, which is another conversation. But obviously, if you look at the visage and the features of this man who was born in 1868. Now, and on the image, he appears to be a younger man, maybe in his 20s or 30s. And so, and his attire suggests that it's Victorian era, circa 1890s, 1900-ish. So the image on this, if we can go back to the previous image, in the previous frame, I'm sorry. I would I would say it would be fair to say that those two gentlemen are not the same people. But also in doing the research and looking at the vital stats of each one, uh, Robert Robertson Taylor, born 1868, would have been maybe 12 or a teenager at the time that photography, that tintype photography, would have been phased out in favor of a newer form of photography that superseded it, that we call stereoscope photography or stereotypes, which became prevalent in the 1880s and 1890s. And so it's fair to say, and I think obvious, that the man in this image is definitely not Robert Robinson Taylor. But we put this out here, and I say this is that we've had to withdraw this tintype from our collection until we can do further research and find another image to, in fact, verify that this is who we think it could possibly be, and that is State Senator Robert S. Taylor, born 1849. And if this is a tintype, in fact, and he's 30 or 40, this could possibly have been taken at the time around his election or tenure as a state senator. So fast forward to the next frame again, please. So I'll put this as filler and deputize a lot of curators out there to be on the lookout for any images of not only Robert Robinson Taylor, there are lots of images of him that you'll find out there, but in particular, Robert S. Taylor, State Senator Robert S. Taylor, born 1849. And in fact, if you can contact us here at the museum, and we would love to compare and or contrast that with the tintype, which is in our collection. Next screen, please. So, as I mentioned previously, Edward R. Rawls contested the 1884 election, and he was born in Garysburg in 1856 and was elected 3 times legally to the North Carolina House of Representatives and served in 1887, 89, and 1897. Rawls's descendants claim that he also, as I mentioned, was elected in 1885 and to the House, but the Klan burned the ballots, as I mentioned. In majority Black Northampton County, North Carolina, which again is on the border of Virginia and North Carolina. And if you're presently traveling that way, it would be on Interstate 85. And Garysburg is one of the first towns in North Carolina that you'll enter when you're traveling south on Interstate 85 in North Carolina. And I mentioned that he previously was allowed a Senate hearing, and it was found that he was not seated because of the previously aforementioned burned ballots. So the Senate gave him $50 in greenback for him to travel back to Northampton County. And according to his family descendants, he took his $50 and married a lady named Alice Ransom. And they were married, and for the Reconstruction era up to the present day, they literally still have their family reunions in Northampton County and northeastern North Carolina. But this election trickery of 1884 by the Democrats caused them, you can say, to help sponsor and introduce the bill to incorporate Princeville, North Carolina. Now, let's take a step back and talk about Princeville, if we can. Princeville is as a community of color, as I mentioned, and is not by any means the oldest community of color in North Carolina, nor the largest community of color in North Carolina, nor the most socioeconomically prosperous community of color. Like many of these communities, uh, there were people who were formerly enslaved, men, women, and children, who followed the United States Army during Sherman's march and also through Eastern North Carolina. And after also Fort Fisher was captured in 1865, there was a Union general there named General Terry, who also joined Sherman, where many formerly freed people followed him. And one of the places where uh, General Terry and the United States troops, United States colored troops in particular, came was a place on the Tar River outside of Tarboro that was labeled Freedom Hill, where the Emancipation Proclamation was read, like many of these communities, and people settled there because they really had no other places to go. And in this case, that place was a swampy side on the leeward, often flood prone side of the Tar River. Now, mind you, on the opposite side of that Tar River is historic Tarboro, which I previously mentioned, the colonial town created by the British, and after North Carolina became a state in the Union, the county seat of Edgecombe County. Uh, so, if we can go to the next frame. So Princeville and Edgecombe County, as you can see on the map, and I know this is kind of hard to point out, but Princeville and Edgecombe County in particular is located in the heart of what has been labeled the Black Belt, not only of North Carolina, but of the entire South. And again, the Black Belt references counties and or communities of majority people of color. And you'll see on this map uh, an 1890 map from the North Carolina Museum of History collection that was featured in the Freedom, a Promise Disrupted exhibit. Uh, but one of the things that took place in the legislature that the Democrats began to do was to group as many of these majority communities of color, particularly majority Black counties, into as one congressional district. And by some counts, there were upwards of 25 counties, majority people of color. And so, what resulted after the 1868 Constitution and the 1870 census, federal census, was some of the first gerrymandering in the South. Now, it is important to note that gerrymandering, or the lumping of districts, is something that began in the northern states of the United States and in Massachusetts in particular during the antebellum era. But we'll digress and refocus on what we are talking about here. So if we can screen it to the next screen, please. So what you see is your favorite farmer and historians outline an illustration of what resulted in one of the largest meandering congressional districts in the history of North Carolina. Um, a district that literally spans from the Virginia border, the Virginia North Carolina border, down to the Atlantic Ocean to the southern coast, southeastern coast of North Carolina. And this again is the second congressional district, which was majority Black during Reconstruction, majority people of color. And the counties that I'll list are all bordered by counties which are also majority counties of color or nearly majority counties of color. So this is a rendition. I'm going to segue between 1870, 80, and 90 versions. So if you look on the number 1 on the map, number 1 indicates Vance County. And Vance County is where the town of Henderson, North Carolina, is located. And Henderson is the county seat. And Henderson is where you'll drive directly also into North Carolina, coming south on Interstate 85. Vance County was in fact gerrymandered in 1880 to split Granville County, which is to the west. And again, as I previously mentioned, aggregately before the Civil War was the largest slaveholding county in the state of North Carolina and majority people of color. And to the west, you'll see number 2, which is Warren County. And Warren County, as I previously mentioned, is and was majority people of color. And during this time, upwards of 80% of the population and the voting populace were people of color. And what resulted with the formation of this new district in 1880 was literally the splitting off of Warren County and forming and taking out eastern Granville County and newly formed Vance County out of the second congressional district. And then you'll see number 3 on the map there, Northampton County, where I previously mentioned Edward Ned Rawls was from, and it's a colonial county also that was formed in 1741 by the British Colonial Assembly here in what was then the Colony of North Carolina. And literally from its formation to the Civil War through Reconstruction to this day, again, these counties are majority counties of color. Also counties with large indigenous populations, people like Saponi and people like Occaneechi and Tuscarora. And then Halifax County, and I mention these indigenous communities because by law, a lot of these people before the Civil War codified as air quote free people of color. And then after the war, oftentimes these people voted for and with Republicans. And then there is Edgecombe County, which was formed in 1741, just like Northampton County. And Edgecombe County, as I previously mentioned, majority Black. And if you look where Edgecombe County is located, number 5, you'll see a P, which denotes Princeville. And that is somewhat central, literally across the Tar River and the middle of Edgecombe County there, and at the headwaters of the Tar River that flows down and empties into the Sounds there. And then if you travel southwestward within the second congressional district, would have been newly formed Wilson County, formed in 1855 as a direct result of a railroad that was constructed between 1833 and 1840. It's called the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad. And Weldon is located on the Virginia border, right on the Northampton and the Halifax County line, where the longest railroad on earth was constructed largely by enslaved men between 1833 and 40, crossing several river basins, 140 miles, and ending at the port city of Wilmington, North Carolina. And again, 140 miles, completed in 1840, was at the time the longest railroad on earth. And you'll know, interestingly, that railroad literally splits down the middle the Black Congressional Second District, as well as many of the majority counties of majority counties of color. But again, Wilson County was formed after the completion of the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad, and was chartered by the state in 1855. And then to the southeast of Wilson County is Greene County, formed in 1799 and named for Continental General Nathaniel Greene from the American Revolutionary War. And again, we mentioned we'll give a nod to America 250. This is a county that's formed literally in honor of an American Revolutionary general. And 1799, majority people of color. The county seat is a place called Snow Hill, which interestingly is across the swamp from another older community of color called Browntown, which, by the way, is not incorporated. And then there is to the southwest of Greene County, located in the second district, is Wayne County, formed in 1779 and named for another Revolutionary War general, Anthony Wayne. And Goldsboro is the present county seat of that town. And Goldsboro formed 1849, literally again on the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad there. And then there's Lenoir County to the east of Wayne County, which has the county seat of Kinston. And Kinston was renamed after Kingston, which was named originally for King George III. And again, another majority Black county, formed in 1791 and named for Revolutionary War General William Lenoir. And again, these are communities of color, majority communities of color, mixed indigenous and people of African descent. And then to the southeast of Lenoir County, you'll see Craven County, which is one of the oldest counties in the state, formed by the Colonial Assembly in 1712, where New Bern is the county seat and was originally the second British customs port in the newly formed colony of North Carolina. And Craven, from the outset, was largely Tuscarora mixed African descended people as well as European descent people. But New Bern, formed 1712, comprised a large portion of this second district. And then rounding out the counties, and again on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, is Jones County of 1779, named for Wiley Jones, who's a prominent legislator and a person active during our American Revolutionary War era. And his county named in his honor in 1779, and again, another county of majority of color. And so if you look at the geography of this county, literally somewhat kind of centrally located would be Princeville. So next screen, please. So I mentioned that map and those counties that were formed during Reconstruction. Counties like Durham, which were gerrymandered of Western Wake County and Eastern Orange County in 1880, the same year that Vance County was formed. But if we go all the way to the southeastern part of the state was our state's largest city, Wilmington, and the port city. And no matter what happened during that Reconstruction era, the legislature could not manage to get New Hanover County and or the largest city within that district. And the New Hanover County also continually elected biracial governments, both in the county as well as in the city of Wilmington. Um, and also throughout this Reconstruction era, you'll see the names of the state legislators and the state senators who were elected from Edgecombe County and served at the state capitol between 1868 and 1901. And again, Edgecombe County, with Princeville in particular as the center of not only the county, but the second congressional district, and for all intents and purposes, the head of, we'll call the air quote, Black Republican caucus in the state, managed to elect state senators and state legislators well into the 19th century and turning over into the beginning of the 20th century when the grandfather clause was introduced, as I mentioned. So for brief periods, the different races in our state, African Americans, indigenous people, European Americans, we did enjoy short-lived moments that approached semblances of equality. Sadly, following increasing instances of violent intimidation, clan chicanery, it culminated in the only coup d'etat in American history since the American Revolution itself, between 1775 and 1783. The only revolution took place in the largest city in North Carolina during and after the November 1898 elections, where white supremacists under the guise of the red shirts seized control of the duly elected city council at gunpoint in Wilmington. Biracial Republicans and Democrats working hand in hand to make Wilmington, New Hanover County, and the state of North Carolina Union live up to the creed that's embedded in our American Constitution and system of government. And as a result, what happened is, of this coup d'etat, is that white supremacists within, at that time, the Democratic Party, often noted as Bourbon Democrats, had crashed this experiment of Reconstruction, this two-step dance that we did, one step forward and one step back, that often was referred to within the African American community as a cakewalk, or an old dance that people used to do during the Reconstruction. And determined to have the cake and eat it too, ensuring that everyone would eat Jim Crow after 1901. That's Jim Crow segregation. And segregation made it illegal for people of color and people of European descent to be on equal social or legal status. And if either violated those social constraints, there were severe legal and social repercussions. Next frame, please. So George Henry White, as I mentioned, Congressman George Henry White was the fourth duly elected Black Republican congressman from the state of North Carolina. the first being John Adams Hyman, who was from Warren County and was elected in the 1870s. And then the second is a man named Edward James E. O'Hara, who was from Halifax County, North Carolina, which is, again, east of Edgecombe County in Princeville. And the third, the previously mentioned Henry Plummer Cheatham, who served from the second congressional district out in 1894. And then the last from North Carolina and the last from the entire South is Congressman George Henry White. And what you see on the screen is the right is the image of Congressman White, or what I should say at the time, State Senator George Henry White, from the North Carolina Museum of North Carolina State Archives collection. And on the left, you'll see your favorite farmer and historian reading the Black Second display that is at the George Henry White Education Center in Bladen County, which is the historically renovated 1890 home of the Spalding family. And you may know the Spalding family from the Black Wall Street of Durham and the creation of North Carolina Mutual in 1898 and the world's largest Black business. But in fact, the Spalding family is from southeastern North Carolina and is large part of that Black exodus from the Wilmington diaspora after the 1898 coup. And like many of those people who were in the original Black Wall Street of Wilmington, North Carolina, they literally went up the railroad track, the North Carolina Railroad track, the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad track from Wilmington to this brand new town of Durham and established. But their original home has been converted into the George Henry White Center and has these displays. And one of them is representing the Black Second that White represented between 1897 and 1901. And he was, as again, elected to the state house in 1881 and 1885. The legislature gerrymandered Craven from the second congressional district in the 1870s. And as I mentioned, White, as it turned out, serendipitously married Cora Lena Cherry, the daughter of Henry Cherry, the old Republican boss from the early Black Republicans, and moved to Tarboro and the Princeville area. And as fate would have it, would again be eligible and run and indeed serve the state, the Black congressional second Black congressional district of North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, and in the 55th Congress of the United States. And you can see more about him in our 2023 Emmy nominated video on PBS, George Henry White, Searching for Freedom. Next screen, please. Thank you again. Edgecombe Ridere, which is our 1893 state motto. Translated means to be rather than to sing. Thank you again. My name is Earl Imes, farmer and historian. Goodbye.